In this video, we're going to take a look at our income and what we owe to the CRA. We're going to start by looking at income from our self-employment income, our T4 income, either from a full or part-time job, tips and other income, and any income from interest on savings and investments. But if you're looking for something specific, be sure to check out the chapters in the description if you want to jump ahead. Let's start with our self-employed entries. Like we did with our expenses, we want to enter in any paychecks we got week by week. The gross total you got paid goes here, and the sales tax goes here. Do that throughout the year and you'll be able to keep track of how your self-employed income impacts how much you owe the CRA. If you're in a province that has more than one sales tax, you put the second sales tax here. If not, it stays blank. If you find yourself running out of room, you can click here to get to the Extra Income tab and enter in your extra income here. For now, let's go back. If you're a contractor, you'll probably be invoicing your clients with a simple invoice, and you'll have the total amount you were paid and the sales tax you were paid. Those amounts go here, total and sales tax, along with the date of the payment and description of the job, which can include the invoice number if you want. Let's look at a one-off payment for a TV appearance. If you're a member of a union, chances are your gross total payment is not the same as the amount that is going into your bank account. The gross total payment is the total amount of money that the client sent in your direction for your service. But as it travels to you, a portion is taken out for certain deductions and your agent commissions. When it finally gets to you, what's left over is known as your net payment. The net payment is not what you record on your spreadsheet, however. You record your gross payment because these amounts are being written off in your spreadsheet as expenses. So, looking at our performance pay stub for a TV appearance, let's break it down. They paid us $1,700. That's based on a day rate of $1,300 minus the discount they got as a CPIP production, making it $975, and then the buyout or usage of it on TV, which brings it up to $1,700. They paid me sales tax on top of that, in this case HST, bringing my total up to $1,921. Yay me! Then we have a deduction of $73. In this case, it's my dues and RRSP savings together. And then we subtract the commission we paid to our agent, which is the payment plus HST, which gives us $357. And that's what gives us our net amount, which is what actually gets deposited into our account. So the question is, what do we put in our spreadsheet? First, we want our gross total payment and how much of it was sales tax. The gross total is going to be our gross plus sales tax equals $1,700 plus $221. And then we put in the sales tax under HST. Now we can also put in our expense for agent commissions and dues. In our fast links, we go to agent commissions, put in $357, and it automatically gets chopped up into sales tax and subtotal. For dues, we can put in our dues paycheck by paycheck, but remember, we also have the option to just use the tax receipt at the end of the year that our unions send to us. Up to you. In this case, the retirement deduction would be to an RRSP, and itemized retirement remittance reporting is spotty at best for a variety of reasons. So we do RRSPs from the tax receipts at the end of the year, one lump sum, not from individual payments. One-off payments will differ from client to client, but this should give you a general idea of how to break down a one-off pay stub. Next, let's look at a long-term contract. Let's say a theater contract. When you're doing a long-term contract, your pay stub will have two amounts, the amounts for the current paycheck and the total amounts they've paid you for the current year. So to put this in our spreadsheet, from our current column, we get the gross amount by adding the total amount we got paid plus the sales tax, which is the HST here, and put that in the gross total. Then we take the sales tax by itself and put that in the HST slot. And that's income done. Next, let's look at the deductions. We have dues from performances and dues from workshops. So we can get our fast links, dues, and enter in the date and add those two together. Equals $76.50 plus $154. Good. We can skip retirement savings because we do that as a lump sum at the end of the year. And for long-term contracts, if they provide lodging, we can add our rent payment to the business use of home. Rent. And we enter it in. If you see a deduction that you're unfamiliar with, don't be afraid to call the admin for your payroll and ask questions so you know if this is something that you can write off. Also, if you don't set up automatic payments of commissions to your agent with payroll, you'll have to send that commission payment to your agent yourself and add it in separately to your spreadsheet. Now, here's where you have a choice to make. If you're a performer with a long-term contract, sometimes your employer will offer to withhold some tax from your paycheck and handle some of the payments to your income tax for you. What we are specifically looking for here is this, the Fed tax. This is the amount of tax they've held back and paid to the government for your income tax for the year. What we want is the year-to-date amount. To add it to your spreadsheet, you click the What You Owe fast link and put the year-to-date amount they've paid for you here in the prepaid self-employed income tax to the CRA. Now, when you get a long-term contract, if they offer to do this for you to hold back a portion of your paycheck for taxes, you can go that path, but here's why I wouldn't. If you let them hold on to your tax amounts just sit there until tax time, and then they send it to the CRA for you, and that's nice. But if you're using the spreadsheet, chopping up each paycheck and putting your tax amounts away in your holding accounts like we outlined in episode 2, while your tax amounts are sitting in those accounts, they're gaining interest. And after you pay your taxes, you get to keep that interest. So holding on to your own tax money will literally pay you extra money. Next, we're looking at employed income. If you have an employed 9-to-5 or part-time job where they automatically take taxes off your paycheck, we have a spot for that too. Go to your fast links and click employed income. Unlike self-employed income, we aren't going to itemize these payments. We're just going to periodically add the year-to-date amounts. Let's look at a typical pay stub. This is an example of a retail employee part-time job pay stub. Instead of itemizing each payment like we do with our self-employed income, each time you get a pay stub, you're just going to enter in the year-to-date amounts. We're looking for a few things here. Year-to-date gross amount paid, year-to-date CPP contributions, government pension, year-to-date EI premiums, year-to-date federal and provincial taxes, year-to-date union dues if you're in a union, and year-to-date RRP or RRSP contributions. Not every job is going to have all of these things, but on this pay stub, you can see a few. Year-to-date gross amount paid here, year-to-date CPP contributions, year-to-date EI premiums here, and year-to-date federal and provincial taxes here. Enter those in, and that's your employed income done for the week. Now, we can do that all year long, pay stub by pay stub, using the year-to-date amounts, but the final entry will come from the end-of-year T4 report our employer sends us. Next, we have tips and other income. Now, some people don't do this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that the CRA does ask that if you get paid cash tips or other income that you report it. If you get cash tips or other income at your employed job that don't show up on a pay stub or T4, you can click on the Extra Income tab and report it under Tips or Other Income, which will in turn affect how much you owe the CRA. If you have scholarships, research grants, or artist grants, you keep track of them in the Extra Income tab. If you've been doing a project that you got a grant for, what you want to do is keep track of the materials and expenses for that project here. For scholarships, you only have to keep track of the related expenses if it's for a part-time post-secondary program. Now, let's go back. Let's say I got an artist grant for a project, and I had this much in project expenses. Even if I've recorded the income here, if I get a T4A at the end of the year, it's still best practice to enter it into my T's tab in my spreadsheet. In case I forgot to record some of the income throughout the year, the T4A amount will override what I've recorded myself. Lastly, we have the T5, T4A, and T3 tax receipts tab. When you get those amounts, you'll want to put them here. There's room for multiple T5s, T3s, and T4As. T-slips are fairly easy to read because they're organized by box number. Here's a T4A that was mailed to us February of 2024 for the year of 2023. I can put the name of the employer here, and box 48, the income, can go here. Sometimes you'll get these reports in the mail, or sometimes you'll get an email saying your T reports are ready to download from a website. So look out for those around January and February. If you're a contractor, it's also always a good idea to check your personal CRA portal to see if the CRA has received any T reports that didn't make it to you. So, now that you've entered in your income for the week, we click on what we owe. We've collected this much in HST, we've spent this much in business HST from all our expenses, so we owe this much to our HST savings. And after deductions from all our expenses, this is how much we owe to our income tax account. If you make those transfers to your online tax savings accounts, and then enter them down here, now your red flags go away and you have the money you owe the CRA tucked away for taxes. The rest of your money is all yours. Early in the year, when you click What I Owe the CRA, you'll notice a negative green number for the income tax owed. That just means your total earnings at this point are low enough right now that you'd actually get a refund. As your business makes money throughout the year, that number will turn red, and when it does, that's your cue to start setting money aside for your tax bill. Once you do, the red flag goes away. And again, you still owe that money to the CRA at the end of the year, but because you've tucked that money away into its holding account, you won't have to worry and stress about paying the CRA come tax time. One last quick note, if you collect sales tax, the amount of sales tax owed will start as red right away, so be sure to start setting that money aside from the very beginning. Before we finish up with our spreadsheet, a note about provinces that still have two separate sales taxes. If you live in a province with just one sales tax or Quebec, you can skip this part. If you're a self-employed contractor living in a province like Saskatchewan that still has two sales tax categories, in this case GST and PST, you do have to collect both sales taxes and give them to the government. But only the GST will be recoverable, meaning when you collect GST from someone who pays you, but you spend money for business expenses, the GST amount you owe the CRA will be the GST you've collected minus the GST you've spent. Whereas the PST owed to the government is just all the PST you've collected. The PST you pay for your expenses gets included in your subtotal and does lower the amount of your income tax you will eventually owe, but it's not directly recoverable the way the GST and HST are. The same thing goes for RST if you live in Manitoba. If you live in a province with HST or just GST, you don't have to worry about this. But if you live in a province with PST or RST, you're going to want to have 3 savings accounts for tax: income tax, PST or RST, and GST. When you put your amounts owed into these accounts, you have this middle column to add your extra sales tax so that your extra red flag disappears. And that's it for how to use the self-employed spreadsheet. Next, we'll be looking at your receipts, answering the questions, how do we keep track of our physical receipts and the best way to keep track of our digital receipts?